trying so hard not to turn on this Chelsea ownership, man, because the first year and a half of Topoli's ownership has been an absolute shit show, hasn't it? $1 billion spent just to become worse. We sit 3 points worse off in the league than we did last season, and let's remember, last season was the worst Chelsea Premier League season of my entire lifetime. In 2023, we've collected 39 points from 39 games, but you know what? I accept how privileged and how spoiled I have been in my lifetime supporting this club. My dad used to travel up and down the country watching Chelsea play second division football. And in my conscious lifetime, I have only ever known one kind of Chelsea. And that is a Chelsea that win both on and off the pitch. So now that times have got hard, I constantly have to remind myself to be patient and remember how lucky I've been in my life supporting this club. And patient, by the way, is exactly what I've been. Because since Roman Abramovich left Chelsea Football Club, things have gone from bad to worse. We've gone from being European champions to one of the easiest teams to beat in the whole Premier League. We've gone from being the only team in London to the second best team in Fulham. We've brought players in we shouldn't have. We've let players go that we shouldn't have. And we've risked violating FFP in doing so. Out of pure optimism and reluctancy of speaking things into existence, I've always tried as hard as I can to back Bowley's ownership and to say that maybe, just maybe, there is method behind Bowley and Clearlake's madness, but the more I learn about this ownership, man, the more I seriously doubt that. Because now we are hearing that Chelsea Football Club are willing to listen to offers for Conor Gallagher in the January transfer window. Right, people, what's happening, and welcome back to the Joey Knight podcast. If you are new around here, please do me a massive favour at the end of the video. If you like the content and you want to see more from myself, please hit the subscribe button and also click the bell so that you get a notification every time one of my videos goes live. I want to do something right now with you guys. If you believe that Conor Gallagher should not be sold, please smash that like button. And if you believe that Conor Gallagher should be sold, I really want to hear why in the comment section to this video. So here we have it. If what we are reading in multiple media outlets is believed to be true, that means that Bowley, Egbali, Clearlake Consortium, whoever the fuck runs this football club, believe that they know more about what this team needs than Mauricio Pochettino. Because let's be honest, Poch loves Conor Gallagher. Conor Gallagher is Pochettino's go-to man. He's probably the first name week in, week out on the team sheet for Pochettino. And the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? Every single game in the Premier League that Conor Gallagher has been fit and available for selection for, Pochettino has picked him. 7 or 8 of those games, he's given him the captain's armband. He made Reece James the captain before a ball was kicked. And then ultimately, even though the second in line and third in line looked like it would be Ben Chilwell and Thiago Silva, he hands the captaincy over to Conor Gallagher. Why? Because he knows he can trust Conor Gallagher. We have got a couple of £100 million midfielders sat just behind Conor Gallagher, and at the moment in time, Conor Gallagher is outperforming them week in, week out. And although it'd be so easy to look at the Premier League table, see Chelsea all the way down in 12th, and then come to a conclusion that if Conor Gallagher was any good, Chelsea wouldn't be in 12th, that is just not true. Conor Gallagher has been one of the shining lights in this season so far. He's leveled up his performances massively. Pochettino's getting the best out of him. He's showing layers to his game and developing layers that we didn't think he had to his game. Although Chelsea have been bad in quite a couple of performances so far, Conor Gallagher is one of the only men that can hang his head high in nearly every single performance and say he has done what is asked of him. So regardless whether you think that Conor Gallagher is the man to be able to help push us on towards reaching those Champions League spots in seasons to come, at this moment in time, clearly Pochettino thinks he is. So to take away one of Pochettino's most trusted players halfway through his first season is just nothing short of criminal. Let me beat you to it. The first thing you're thinking right now is, hold on, we're reading that Conor Gallagher's reluctant to sign a new contract. And to that, my friends, I say bullshit. Just do this for me, right? Put yourself in the mind of Conor Gallagher. Right? You're playing for your boyhood club. Most of the time, you're wearing the captain's armband. You've had more managers than I've had hot dinners in your short career so far. And apart from the times you were sent out on loan, none of them were really fancying you to make you a first-team starter. But in the summer, that all changes because Mauricio Pochettino, a manager with a proven track record of working with young players, comes in, he puts an arm around you, he selects you at every opportunity, he plays you in different positions along that midfield, and you pretty much realise, as well as the whole fan base, face that you are now his go-to man. His coaching elevates your performances massively. People are talking about you in the mix to be starting for England, whereas last season people weren't even speaking about you in that frame at all. And at some points in the season, when pundits and maybe even fans have called for you to be dropped, your manager, Mauricio Pochettino, has stuck by you and made sure that you know you have his trust. You're seeing teammates that have come through the academy too, like Reece James and like Levi Colwell, sign new contracts. You know there's interest from other clubs, but those other clubs are more the likes of West Ham and Spurs and maybe Palace again, not City or Madrid. So you're not going to be lured away to go and win Champions League football, are you? You're being courted by Spurs. Why would Conor Gallagher be reluctant to sign a new contract? Now, you lot are a smart bunch, aren't you? So I don't need to spell this out for you. It really doesn't take a rocket scientist, does it? The club have heard Mauricio Pochettino's demands that he needs more money to invest in the transfer market. And they have put their hands together and thought, right, okay, here's what we'll do here. There's nothing better than an academy graduate sale. It's 100% profit, and you can move these players on, and obviously you're also not going to look silly because they're players you've only just brought in as well. They're also players because of the likes of how the wage structure works when players have come through the academy. They're probably not on all that much money, on all that much length of contract, and what that means is it's going to be easier to be able to move a Conor Gallagher on than maybe it will be a Mykhailo Mudryk on. And that means within the next 12 months, you're very, very likely, in fact, I'd say almost certain, to see the likes of Trevor Chalobah going, maybe Conor Gallagher going, Amanda Broha, all leave the club, when realistically, some could argue that the guys that are in and around the first team at the moment are really not as deserving of their spot as any of those three players I've just named. Now, Todd Boehly did not spend the amount of money he did on Romeo Lavia only to have him sitting on the bench, and with the amount of game time that Poch has been giving Conor Gallagher, you then look at that midfield and go, well, he ain't getting dropped, so who is it? It's either Enzo or it's Caicedo, and we both know that, again, that is not within the club and Todd Boehly's best interest. He has just forked out the best part of 200 million on those two signings, which means neither of them are getting dropped, and ultimately Conor will bite the bullet. But why is losing the likes of a Conor Gallagher such a problem? Well, I'll tell you why. We are a club in transition. We're coming out of a 20-odd year period where we were so successful, it is ridiculous. And now we're coming into a period of real uncertainty. So for my money, for what it's worth, and I'm not an expert, I think that the best thing you can do is try and keep as much going and rolling over from that successful period as possible. And by that, I mean staff. I mean players. Look, at the end of the day, I said that maybe a Cesar Azpilicueta, it was time for him to move on, and I understand that. But the likes of Conor Gallagher, Reece James, Levi Colwell, they're all players that were sort of looking up to these guys in that successful period, coming through the academy, and for that reason, they understand the club, man. I'm desperate to preserve what we had in that period. So at least when we eventually get back to more successful times, we've got guys in there who understand what it was like, what that culture was like. And these guys do, they understand the culture of the club. They understand what it means to be a Chelsea player, what it means to put on the blue shirt and wear that badge, what the fans expect of us, and the standards that we really need to be not only holding ourselves to, but need to be in our performances and in the way that we train and everything else, the way that we conduct ourselves, what we need to be sort of spreading in the atmosphere to the new guys coming in so that they can understand the Chelsea way. And here's what you really need to understand. The more of these homegrown players that we lose, the more we lose our identity as a club, and the harder it is to get back to winning ways once Pochettino starts to steady this ship. And before you tell me that Conor Gallagher's not a good player and he's not going to elevate us anyway, you need to remember this. There's so many players who carried on at teams that were in the ascendancy while they started doing well and were still pivotal to those teams, you know. Micah Richards, he was battling relegation at Manchester City and then ended up winning titles with them. Granit Xhaka, he went from the most hated man at the Emirates to the first name in the midfield when it was last season. He was pushing them on to challenge for titles. Harry Kane, he was getting sent out on loan left, right and centre and ended up helping Spurs reach Champions League final. Look at this season, John McGinn, how good he's been. He was battling relegation just last season with Aston Villa, and now we're speaking about him as being one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. So what I'm saying here is, just because a team of 12 are not doing that well, that doesn't mean they don't have players with the potential to be so important for them once things start to go right. And you do see a lot of these guys stay in the dressing room, and maybe at times, right, when we become more successful, hopefully we do, touch wood, Conor Gallagher might not be a first-team starter, that's fine. But in the meantime, while we're trying to cling on to the last final bits of identity we've got, we can't be letting the likes of Conor Gallagher go, Reece James go. It's just ridiculous. And the thing with this is I love the message that Pochettino sticking with Conor Gallagher week in, week out sends to the rest of the dressing room. Now, let me make no qualms about it. Like, Pochettino sticking with Conor Gallagher because he rates him as a player. I rate him as a player. But the message it sends is probably one that goes under the radar, because what Pochettino probably inadvertently is doing there is basically telling the other players that I don't care what wages you're on, I don't care what transfer fee you've come in for, and I don't care what your history is in the game. I will pick on merit of who has proved themselves the most to me. And do you know what that does, right? You might risk upsetting a couple of the £100 million signings, but what it does do is it keeps the dressing room as a whole on board, in my opinion, because then you've got guys like, for example, a Trevor Chalobah when he comes back from injury that can see that Pochettino's sticking with Conor Gallagher, you know. So then he's not just going to think, oh, well, you know, you've brought in Axel Disasi, Benoit, Badia Shill and others, and there's no way that I'm going to make it into that first team, because the proof is in the pudding. Conor Gallagher has been selected in that first team ahead of other big name signings that we've brought in at times. So it really does help get the best out of the players that not only are playing, the players that aren't playing, to make sure they train to the best of their ability, because they know it's not closed off. They know there's every chance they can break into that first team. And what does that do? That breeds a really good intensity in the training ground, a good feeling around the training ground, and no player feeling isolated when, in a time that we have a massively overbloated squad, it's very easy for that to happen. So, for me, it's very, very clear, isn't it? Pochettino does not want rid of Conor Gallagher. And if he does go in January, you pretty much have your concrete, undisputed confirmation that Pochettino is not in control of our transfer policy. And then when you realise who is, and you look at their credentials in football, maybe your expectations of Chelsea Football Club start to change. I put out a poll earlier on today on my Instagram. Thank you to everyone that voted. I had over 1,000 votes, well over 1,000 votes. And at the time of recording, I think it was about 90% in favour of keeping Conor Gallagher. I really do think it's such an important thing. I think that it could potentially create a rift in the dressing room if Conor Gallagher is moved on. I've spoke before about the Jadon Sancho situation at Man United, and I'm not saying Conor Gallagher is going to be exiled, but I know full well there's a lot of players in that Man United dressing room that are very upset about the way that Jadon Sancho has been treated, and you could see something rear its head similar here. Obviously, it's not the manager making the calls, and that's the point I'm trying to make out in this video. But if Conor Gallagher is moved on, players in that dressing room could become disgruntled, if that's even a word. And we're also reading so many reports that players that are on 8-year contracts are already looking to get out the door. I can tell you one thing, Conor Gallagher's not one of those players. So if you read that Conor Gallagher is reluctant to sign a new contract, please try and read between the lines, because Conor Gallagher's not. Conor Gallagher would like to stay at Chelsea. It's the club that will inevitably be forcing him out here. What do you guys think is going to happen? I think there's a very high chance that we do see clubs come in for Conor Gallagher in January. I think there's a very high chance that Chelsea consider it. And I think that this is just going to be the way it is moving forward. But the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? Look, we're being linked to Mark Gahey. That's a player that, all right, Todd Bowley didn't sell, but we're going back in for him. We've seen teams do it in the past. Paul Pogba with Man United. And believe me, we'll let go of a few of these players in this transfer window and give it a season or two, and we'll be linked to them again, just bringing them back. The circus continues. People, let me know your thoughts. Please smash the like button. Get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this one. I'm really, really eager to hear whether it's just me that's sort of riled up by this decision or whether you lot are too. I think you definitely are from the vote that I put out on my Instagram page. Please follow me on Instagram as well. It's linked in the description to this video. Subscribe if you're not already. I will see you all in the next one.